the progress of magnetism, they believed, would someday reveal the absorbing properties of mistletoe. So they understood, and believe that they still understand, the secret of those spongy growths which draw the unused virtues of plants and become surcharged with tinctures and saviors. Mushrooms, truffles, gall on trees, and the different kinds of mistletoe are employed in the mysteries with understanding by a medical science which will be new because it is old. Certain plants, minerals, and animals have been held sacred among all nations of the earth because of their peculiar sensitiveness to the claimed astral fire. The cat, sacred to the city of Bubastis in Egypt, is an example of a peculiarly magnetized animal. You see, anyone stroking the fur of a domestic cat in a dark room can see the electrical emanations in the form of green phosphorescent light, and this must have surely titillated the ancient priests. And in the temples of Bast, sacred to the cat goddess, 3 colored cats were viewed with unusual veneration, as was any member of the feline family whose 2 eyes were of different colors. Lodestone and radium in the mineral kingdom and various parasitic growths in the plant kingdom are strangely susceptible to the cosmic fire which today we know as phosphorescence. The magicians of the Middle Ages surrounded themselves with certain animals such as bats, cats, snakes, and monkeys because they were able to borrow the power of the astral light from these creatures and appropriate it to their own uses. For this same reason, the Egyptians and certain of the Greeks kept cats in the temples, and serpents were always in evidence at the oracle of Delphi. The auric body of a snake, they say, is one of the most remarkable sights that the clairvoyant will ever see, and the secrets concealed within its aura demonstrate why the serpent is the symbol of wisdom among so many nations. And of course, in the mysteries, as the snake sheds its skin, it is the symbol of death and rebirth or resurrection. That Christianity has preserved in part, at least, the primitive fire worship of antiquity is evident in many of its symbols and rituals. The incense burner, so often used in Christian churches, is a pagan symbol relating to the regeneration of the human soul and was in use long before Christianity even came along. The incense within the burner, made from the extracted essences of various plants, represents the life forces within the body of man. The flaming spark burning in the midst of the incense is emblematic of the spiritual germ concealed in the midst of the material organism of man. You see, the spiritual spark in the mysteries is an infinitesimal part of what they call the divine flame, or the great fire of the universe, from whose flaming heart the altar fires of all his creatures have been lighted. The spark of life gradually consumes the incense, so the spiritual nature of man, through the processes of regeneration, gradually consumes all the gross elements of the body, transmuting them into soul power, symbolized by the smoke, and as a person ages, he therefore grows wiser. That was their explanation for the wisdom of the old and the deterioration of the body. For as the person ages, the gross elements are burned by the life flame, which transmutes them into soul flower. Therefore, the body diminishes and the wisdom is increased. Simple, huh? So what's all this research into geriatrics? Although smoke is actually a dense and physical substance, yet light enough to rise in clouds, they believed the soul was actually a physical element. They believe that through purification and the fire of aspiration, it has taken upon itself the nature of intangible atmosphere. Though composed of the substance of earth, it becomes light enough to rise as a fragrant odor into the presence of deity. While some authorities have held that the form of the cross was derived from an ancient Egyptian instrument called the Nilometer, used for measuring the inundations of the Nile, others hold the opinion that the symbol had its origin in the two crossed sticks used by primitive peoples to generate fire by friction. In the History of Freemasonry, written by Mackey, 33rd degree Freemason, and this particular edition printed in 1898, there is only one cross listed in the entire 7 volumes, and it is the swastika. The use of the bell towers and campaniles in the construction of the cathedrals of medieval Christianity, also the more familiar conventionalized church steeple, may be traced back to the fire obelisks of Egypt, which were placed in front of the temples to the superior deities representing the generative force or the rays of the sun, the male principle. All pyramids are symbols of fire, while the heart used on Valentine's is merely an inverted candle flame and is not in the shape of the human heart and never has been. The maypole had its origin in similar antiquity, where it is both a phallic symbol and an emblem of the cosmic fire, the generative force, and the dancing of the maidens around the maypole was, ladies and gentlemen, supposed to bring increased fertility to the land. For the maypole, again, in case you've forgotten the last few sentences, represented nothing less than the phallus. The prevailing custom of having churches face the east is, of course, further evidence of the survival of sun worship. And in the Masonic Lodge, the master sits in the east of the lodge. Practically the only branch of the human race that does not observe this rule is the Arabic. The Mohammedans face their mosques toward Mecca, but still have their appointed hours of prayer governed by the sun. The rose windows and ivy-colored walls are survivals of pagandom, for ivy was sacred to Bacchus because of the shape of its leaf, and this plant was always allowed to trail over the walls of the temple sacred to the Greek solar deity. And all over Europe, you'll see the cathedrals covered with ivy. The golden ornaments upon the altars of Christian churches should remind the philosophical observer that gold is the sacred metal of the sun, because according to alchemists, the sun ray itself crystallized in the earth, thus forming this precious metal, which incidentally, folks, is still being made. And if you visit a Jewish synagogue, the most elaborate synagogues will usually contain a huge golden symbol of the sun. The candles, so often seen adorning the altars and most frequently appearing in an uneven number, are a reminder that the uneven numbers are sacred to the sun. When 3 candles are used, for instance, they symbolize the 3 aspects of the sun, sunrise, noon, and sunset, and are thus emblematic of the Trinity. When 7 are used, they represent the planetary angels called by the Jews Elohim, whose numerical and Kabbalistic values are also 7. And when the even numbers 12 or 24 appear, they represent the signs of the zodiac and the spirits of the hour of the day, called by the ancient Persians the Izids. And when only one light is shown, it is the emblem of the Supreme Invisible Father, who is one, and the little red lamp ever burning over an altar is an offering to the Demiurgus Jehovah, the Lord builder of forms. So, What oil is to the flame, ladies and gentlemen, blood is to the spirit of man. Therefore, oil is often used in anointing, for it is a fluid sacred to the solar power. Because oil contains the life of the sun, it is used in large quantities in far northern lands where it is necessary to generate an abundance of body heat. Hence the proclivity of the Eskimos for eating tallow candles and whale oil. You see, it has stored energy from the sun. Now they say that the actual word Christ is itself sufficient proof that fire and the worship of fire are the two most essential elements of the Christian faith. For the rays of light pouring from the sun were viewed by the ancients, and check this if you don't believe it, for it's true, were viewed by the ancients as the blood of the celestial Lamb, which at the vernal equinox died for the sin of the world and redeemed all humanity through its blood or rays. And then the world sank into winter. The mystery schools of ancient Egypt taught that the blood was the vehicle of the consciousness. The spirit of man traveled through the bloodstream and therefore was not actually located in any one part of the compound organism. You see, they did not know. They believed it moved through the body with the rapidity of thought, so that consciousness of self, cognition of externals, and the sense of perception could be localized in any part of the body by the exercise of the willpower. The initiates viewed the blood as a mysterious liquid, somewhat gaseous in nature, which served as a medium for manifesting the fire of man's spiritual nature. This fire, coursing through the system, animated and vitalized all parts of the form, thus keeping the spiritual nature in touch with all of its physical extremities. And at one point in history, since life was formed in the womb, and they believed that it was formed from a clot of blood, and the baby was endowed with intelligence, at one point in history, it was fashionable for those who could afford it to drink the menstrual blood of virgins, believing that this would make them wise. The mystics looked upon the liver as the source of the heat and power in the blood. Hence, the liver is significant, that the spear of the centurion should pierce the liver of Christ, and the vulture should be placed over the liver of Prometheus to torment him throughout the ages. I hope you're making connections, ladies and gentlemen. In this modern world, with the education available to every man and woman upon this planet, why are we still bowing down to ancient, ignorant metaphors created by priests in the dark, dim halls of history to control the common man and govern him with these stories and myths?